Hello, this is the 276th edition of Catch of the Day, available on the Branch Talk YouTube channel. Today we're going to continue reading from a book written by Trent Wildy entitled The King of Crisis in the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Starting on page 26, second paragraph. How do you think this message would resonate with the kings of Israel? Hosea was essentially saying that God wanted them to be dethroned. As we'll see later, his message was definitely deemed radical and certainly didn't go over well with the kings. The last aspect of this prophecy I want to point to for consideration is the fact that the restored God-approved kingship is that of David. Hosea could have said Solomon, their king, or Saul, their king, or, if he really wanted his message to go over well, he could have mentioned a king of his own day, Uzziah, their king, or Jeroboam, their king. None of these designations would capture his meaning. There is a difference between David and all these other kings that made his name the one and only suitable name to use. He was a king of a different character. We will return to what that is. We will also see that his message, or this message about the kingship of Israel, formed a major part of Hosea's message. As we continue to look at his prophecies, his points should shine forth brighter and yet brighter. As for Hosea's marriage, we can see that God wanted the best for him and for her. Israel's period without kings and priestly activity was to be mirrored by Hosea's wife's period of sexual chastity. Just as Israel was to end that period by returning to God and having an intimate relationship with Him, just so Hosea's wife was to eventually end her period of chastity by returning to Him and having undefiled intimacy, and so to remain forevermore. We all love a happy ending, and God didn't want any less. Yet things don't always go as God would like it. Hosea 1 and 2. As I mentioned earlier, Hosea 3 was very likely the earliest written part of Hosea. It would distract from our main point to go through all the reasons why, and to explore the details of dating the various sections of Hosea. Yet it is important to recognize that Hosea 1 and 2 reflect a further development in the experience and message of Hosea as compared to chapter 3. Chapter 3 speaks of Hosea's acquiring his wife and a period of chastity right at the beginning of their marriage, with an implication that the chastity would one day end and their marriage would be consummated. Hosea 1 and 2 briefly mentions the beginning of the marriage, verses 2 and 3, but it goes beyond this to describe the bearing of children and their interaction with each other and with their mother and Hosea. These interactions dominate the analogy of these chapters. Another point to keep in mind is that Hosea 1 and 2 is a story written about Hosea, not a prophecy written by Hosea himself. Yet we have every reason to believe that this story was written in Hosea's lifetime, and that it accurately reflects his family situation and the prophetic message he bore in relation to it. So Hosea 3 left us with a Hosea who had just gotten married, and who is told that his wife would have to go through a period of chastity before they could be maritally united. Hosea 1 picks up the story with Hosea uniting with his wife, whose name we find out is Gomer, and having a son. God uses this experience to continue the analogy. And the Lord said to him, Name him Jezreel, for in a little while I will punish the house of Israel. On that day I will break the bow of Israel in the valley of Jezreel. Hosea 1, 4 and 5, NRSV. So far, this is giving the same basic message of chapter 3. The kingship must come to an end. The kingdom of Israel would be no longer, at least for a time. The house of Jehu is a dynasty of Israelite kings that had been ruling for almost 100 years when Hosea gave this prophecy. Jehu, the founder of the dynasty, had shed blood in Jezreel by killing off the previous dynasty. 2 Kings 9, 1-10, 17. Hosea's prophecy is that punishment would be brought upon the Jehu dynasty for this act of violence. He didn't see the need for Jehu's dynasty to be replaced by another, but for the kingship and the house of Israel to come to an end. Hosea's son, Jezreel, was a sign that the kingship of Israel was about to come to an end. Something for which Hosea had already seen the need, as we saw while examining Hosea 3. How and why was Jezreel a sign of this event? This will become more evident as we continue. What happens next is where the story of Hosea takes an unpleasant turn. Gomer has 2 more children, but not with Hosea. The description of the conception of Jezreel clearly indicates that he was the child of both Gomer and Hosea. It says, So he, Hosea, went and took Gomer, daughter of Diblaim, and she conceived and bore him Hosea, a son. Hosea 1, verse 3, NRSV. Notice the contrast between this and the description of the conception of Gomer's next children, Lo-Ramah, and her child after that, Lo-Ammi. She conceived again and bore a daughter, Hosea 1, 6, NRSV. When she had weaned Lo-Ramah, she conceived and bore a son, Hosea 1, verse 8, NRSV. We are left wondering, where is Hosea in all this conceiving? Then in the next chapter it is explicitly stated that these children are illegitimate. Upon her children also I will have no pity, because they are children of whoredom. For their mother has played the whore. She who conceived them has acted shamefully, for she said, I will go after my lovers. Hosea 2, verse 4 and 5 in RSV. Notice it does not say upon my children, but upon her children. Upon them I will have no pity. Why? Because they are children of whoredom. Why are they children of whoredom? Because their mother played the whore. The illegitimate nature of these children is exactly why God had Hosea name them what he did. Lo-Ramah means no mercy, and Lo-Ammi means not my people. It was never God's plan that Gomer would be unfaithful to Hosea and bear children without him. But in this God saw a perfect opportunity to illustrate the unfairness of Israel, the unfaithfulness of Israel, and those whom she bore without him. So who do these children allegorically represent? Well, Lo-Ramah is plainly identified with the house of Israel, the northern kingdom, in 1:6. This would logically leave Lo-Ammi to represent the house of Judah, the southern kingdom. This is confirmed in the next couple verses, after describing the birth of these children and their sorry names. Their fate is dwelt upon in this way. Take care.